So this is a new program I have made. It's called Anek for variety. It can run different commands or different command templates over a variety of inputs. You can give single input or list of inputs, different variables with different values. Everything will be saved in a hidden file, and working directory will just have your code and your programs that you can use on it to give different input, and based on those it can run those commands. You can also loop different values, and it has basically lots of other features that I can go in details later on. So you can use help menu that comes along with the term, that command line thing, and you can just open the help, and then if you need help for a specific sub command you can just type that name and it will show you what arguments it will need and what values its arguments need and what that means. So just use that to look at the details. You can also read the readme in GitHub if you want more details. Okay, so there are multiple sub commands. First one would be variable command. It deals with variables that are used to render command templates and run it, and they are not necessary, but it will help you to know which ones are there, so you can scan for any new ones or so on. So -L will list them, D will list them with details, but right now we have no details, so let's try to add something. For main, just write it's the main, and then first line will be the short description, and anything after that will be the long description. So L will just show the short description, while D will show the content of the whole file. So that way you can internally document what each variables mean, and then you can just look at info of the individual variables, or you can look at all of them at once. And the next one is scan. Let's remove all the variables that we have 3 of them. So if we scan variables now, wrong command. If we scan it, it will show 3 new variables that are in the input files. So if we add them as empty files, it will add empty files in the variables directory. So during the next scan it will show nothing, and if we look at the variables directory, there are those files. Yeah, even without these commands can run fine. So next is list command. It's internally used for listing what things are available, so you can it can give you that for autocomplete, but you can use it to see which commands or batch or pipelines that you have already written inside that. You can basically just do list directory or list files, but everything being in a single command is also nice. Okay, so simple list will list everything: commands, input, variables, loops, batch, and everything. And you can individually list just commands or just inputs or just one of them. It should work with all those directories. And then you can use filter for if you want to filter something. For example, if you want to filter inputs that have mean, that will be all of them. But if you choose skew, that's a sample3. It's from the sample directory in the GitHub. So you can use that to list specific inputs with certain variables, and or specific command with certain variables, and then send them to pipeline or send them to a batch file. So you won't run into any mistakes or like errors. And next is run command. So this is the main command for like Anek. It will basically run command templates based on the inputs. If you don't have any input in the template, then you don't need the input, but if you have, you can give them like from the command line, or you can have input files, or like you can have batch files that will run different input for the same command. So let's run a template with no inputs, so you can just run it as it is. It will show the rendered command and then run the command. So if you make it pipeable, it will only print the command, so you can just pipe that into like just bash or like parallel, GNU parallel or anything. So we have few commands that are echo main, echo st and something. So if you don't have variables, it will warn you, and you can give them with override command like manually from the terminal, or you can give that variable based on some input files. So it will just use the value from that input file. And if you use batch, it will run single command for each input file. It will just use different inputs from those files and run all those commands. If you make it pipeable, then you can send it to GNU parallel to run them in parallel. It will just run it one by one, but make sure they can be run in parallel. If any of those commands depend on the previous command, then you cannot run that in parallel. Another thing is pipeline. That's like list of commands one after another. So here echo both will run echo main first, then echo st first, second. So for all those inputs in batch, for three jobs, each one it ran 2 commands, out of like total of 6 commands. And the next one would be loop. So in loop you can make directory with input variable names as file names, and then if you put single variable, it will use that. If you have multiple variable, it will loop through these values. So here I have like 3 values of mean and 2 values of standard deviation, so it will run each combination of those, so total of 6 times with mean 1, 2 and 3, each with standard deviation 1 and 2. So you can overwrite some of them. For example, if you overwrite mean with single value, then it will only loop through the standard deviation, so only 2 times. You cannot give multiple values by override, so you cannot loop using override. So if you override both of them, then you will only run one command. And as shown as before, you can use autocomplete for lots of things, so please make sure to install that. And if you use demo, it will not run the command and only display it, which is useful when you want to make sure it is rendering the command properly. You can like add commands. They are all text files, so you can just use edit command, which will open your editor, and then you can just save commands in commands folder, and then pipelines in pipeline folder, and so on. And there is bonus feature with override. That's like you can use meta variables. I'll show you later. So let's make a new command, echo all, that will echo mean, standard deviation and skew. And we don't have skew for 2 samples in our input, so it will error out. Let's see. Okay, it is saying missing data for skew for sample 1, and it just ended. So we use sample 3 it will run fine, but sample 2 it will error out. So we can override skew variable with some fixed value that will give skew value that. So it will give that to missing and non-missing all values, since it's just overwriting everything. But you can override that with standard deviation value. So for each sample, skew will be equal to standard deviation. So that's it.